Kenny, we went winless 1997. I thought I was going to have to hire a bodyguard. I could not even wear a Goodwrench uniform in or out of that racetrack because people were accusing me of sabotaging Dale Earnhardt's career. It got really bad near the end of 97, but mid-February of 1998, hell, I could have run for president, probably got votes.
It's the Kenny Wallace Conversation, brought to you by JEGS.
You win the 1992 Daytona 500 with Davey Allison as your driver, and then you do something that is ricocheted throughout the world. Dale Earnhardt Sr., the man in black, number 3, has done it all, but he has never won the Daytona 500. And Formula One drivers throughout Europe, they knew the Dale Earnhardt Sr. story. They all knew. Everybody knew. And lo and behold, right there, the man I'm looking at right now, Larry Mack, America's crew chief, you win the Daytona 500 with the great Dale Earnhardt Sr. So once again, what do you remember?
Well, it's always flattering when people say what you just said, Kenny, and I appreciate it a lot. I still have fans today that come up to me and go, "You're the man.
You're the man."
Okay, that sounds good. But I just happened to be the fortunate guy that was his crew chief and was in place when he didn't blow up. He didn't run out of fuel. He didn't have a flat tire going off into turn 3 on the final lap. He didn't hit a seagull on the back straightaway. I just happened to be the guy that was in place when all this came together. And, my first year with him was 97. And so the first race was the 1997 Daytona 500. And we had a very, very up and down day. The car was not driving that good. We'd had some really bad pit stops. But with Dale Earnhardt, somehow, some way, with about 20 to go, we're leading the race. And I remember looking at Richard Childress and going, "What do you think, boss?" He said, "Been here way too many times." Well, with about 12 to go, I realized what he was talking about because we were barrel rolling down the back straightaway where the car had picked up a push off too. And I think it might have been Gordon gets into his left rear and we're barrel rolling. So I totally knew what Richard was talking about. And honestly, Kenny, something I never thought would ever happen. Because trust me, when I went to Richard Childress Racing, and I'm paired up with probably one of the greatest race car drivers to ever grip a steering wheel, and I had taken everything that I had learned at Robert Yates Racing, it wasn't a matter if we could get him another championship. It's how many more can we get him? Kenny, we went winless 1997. I thought I was going to have to hire a bodyguard. I could not even wear a Goodwrench uniform in or out of that racetrack because people were accusing me of sabotaging Dale Earnhardt's career. It got really bad near the end of 97, but mid-February of 1998, hell, I could have run for president, probably got votes after winning that 500. But we built that car in mid-1997 before January testing had even come along in 98. That car had already been in the wind tunnel 2 or 3 times. There is no telling. There were no testing rules back then. There is no telling how many laps Dave Marcus tested that car at Talladega. We'd probably been to Talladega 2 or 3 times. And honestly, we almost cut the body off of that car before we ever went to the track to test it. But thank the good Lord we didn't. And the reason we were about to cut the body off, Kenny, you've been to the wind tunnel. You'll understand the terminology. The drag number was just not that low. But what made that car good is when you yawed it in the wind tunnel, the drag number didn't go up. The drag number stayed the same. And Dave Marcus, the first time he drove it, he told me, he said, "Dale's going to love this car." He said, "When I go off in the corner and I turn the steering wheel, it doesn't lose any RPM."
Wow.
And that's what made that car so good. No idea why. We didn't have all the Romer arms and all the stuff back then. Hell, the way we put a body on back then was right there. we could never duplicate that car, but that's what made that car so good.
Let me interrupt you. I have to, because I think you can help me understand something, because I never got to the bottom of this. How come Dale Earnhardt Sr. did not test that much, and why did Dave Marcus do so much testing for Senior?
Well, one, Richard helped Dave out a lot, especially with the engines and some information for the two super speedways, Daytona and Talladega. But Dale would just get bored.
Yeah.
When I first went up there and he came to the shop for the first time, I said, okay, Dale, let's talk about a testing schedule. What do you mean testing schedule? I said, well, where we're going to go test? Well, what the hell are we going to test? I said, well, we're going to try to test things that makes us better. He got bored. He just did not want to test. And I remember going, I think it was to Indy to test with him. And you probably remember I had a little index card in my pocket.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a list of stuff I wanted to test. And he grabbed that thing out of my pocket and got that pen and said, we've already tested that. That didn't work. I'm not going to test that. We don't really have a lot to test now, do we? You wonder why I'm he's part of the damn reason.
So you win the Daytona 500 in 1998 with Dale Sr. You make it to the checkered flag. You come through the tri-oval, and we all have watched this replay over and over. The whole industry is on pit road, high-fiving that black number 3. During that moment, Larry, when pit road was just organized chaos, what do you remember about that car coming down pit road? Did you stay in the pit area? Where were you?
See, I knew nothing about that, as Mike Joy coined it, that receiving line. I had no idea that even happened. There was so much chaos in our pits. That was back when we used to race back to the caution.
Oh.
And we had taken the 2 to go. And John Andretti and somebody got together on the back straightaway, and that brought the caution out. And so Danny Culler, our spotter, was on him. You got to bring it back. You got to bring it back. We're racing back to the caution. And I remember, obviously, when we took the white flag and the caution.
Wow.
But everything that had happened to that 3 car, I just wanted to make sure we didn't let nothing fall through the cracks. And the track was clear. John and whoever he'd gotten together with, that might have been John in Lake Speed. But anyhow, I knew we still had to make that final lap. Even though it was under caution, we still had to complete lap 200. And I remember you couldn't hear nothing on the radio. Everybody was trying to talk at one time. And finally I said, Dale, make sure you make this lap at a good speed. And Kenny, I think he ran that lap about as fast as he run any lap in the race, making sure he had made it back. And I felt the biggest relief. I felt like the weight of the world was off my shoulders, because, again, a winless 1997 and something else, we had changed engines race morning because we had a problem in final practice with a push rod and a rocker arm. So we changed engines race morning. So I was pretty uptight when that race started, but like I say, I felt like the weight of the world was off my shoulders.
That is so badass. It's unbelievable.